All right, so we're going to do part two of the Hermetic principles. The first part
Nice.
was super dope and fun.
It was.
I liked sharing. Are you ready for part two?
I am ready. Let's do this.
Excellent. All right, let's go to part two.
Polarity. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree.
That's
Extreme.
that's a difficult like and unlike are the same. That's weird. Okay, sure. Because that's to me when you
Everything
dislike
is
something.
dual. Okay. I think I know what this is eventually going to get at, but
So sort
might
of
need
like
to see more.
yeah, I think I kind of get it.
Extremes meet. All truths are but half truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. This principle embodies the truth that everything is dual. Everything has two poles. Everything has its pair of opposites, all of which
Okay.
were old Hermetic axioms. Everything is and is not at the same time. All
Okay.
truths are but half truths.
Okay.
Every
So it's the yin and yang principle, right? Like
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Or like I always like Jordan Peterson's spin on Taoism, like order and chaos, for example, right? And this ever changing, ever moving, but they're two sides of the same coin, really.
and it,
You
and,
can't really have one without the other,
and
right? How
then
do you
it's
define one without another?
and you
Yeah.
see the the eyes or like the dots. You got the little bit of one in the other, right? And a little bit of there's a
Yeah.
little bit in there.
truth is half false. There are two sides of everything.
Yeah.
It explains that in everything there are two poles or opposite aspects, and that
There you go.
opposites are really only the two extremes of the same thing. The example the Kabbalion gives us is that there is no such thing as absolute heat or absolute cold. The two terms, heat and cold, simply indicate varying degrees of the same thing. And that same thing, which manifests as heat and cold, is merely a form, a rate of vibration.
Okay.
So heat
A form of something. Okay. This one's interesting. It's definitely pretty complex, I would say. It's like
Form.
simple, but like it's like, oh yeah, the yin and yang, and it's like even just the yin and yang in itself is a very
Yeah, that
complex
can get
thing.
complex. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole set of ideas and lifestyles are built around that, right?
Yeah.
It's
It's
really
so true.
something. Yeah, for sure.
and cold are simply the two poles of that which we call heat. The same principle manifests in the case of light and darkness, which are the same thing. The difference consisting of varying degrees between these two poles of the same phenomena. So what you really have is the absence of light, the presence of light. And when there is an absence of light, that is what we call darkness, although they are just two poles of that one thing, that one phenomena.
Oh,
This law
okay.
of polarity can best improve our lives by giving us the clarity to view the world around us. How many times have we seen opposing forces act identical in nature? How many times have we loved so much that it turned into its polar opposite, hate? And how many times have we cared so much that it traveled all the way over to its polar opposite, numbness? These are all different examples of the law of polarity and how one
I really like this after school channel because it's
Yeah.
visual, and visuals help
Yeah.
tremendously with complex information.
They do, right? I'm thinking too, right? The American political system, let's say, each side will accuse the other of a certain behavior when they themselves are acting out the very behavior they claim they dislike.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Like, or in this case, the love hate or caring numbness.
It's like you personally. It's like
Yeah.
you summarize the Democratic Party for the last 8 years and 4 years, right? Everybody's a monster except for them, but there is no redemption on their end. It's just all cancel.
energy gets split into polar opposites along a spectrum. The principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates.
Interesting.
This principle embodies the truth that in everything there is manifested a measured motion, to and from, a flow and inflow, a swing backward and forward, a pendulum-like movement. This law is so important because when we are interpreting what we see inside this age, if we don't have knowledge of the law of rhythm, we won't understand that this is actually a redemption arc. There is some sort of return that is happening, meaning that if there was ever a group of people, or let's just call it a movement, some sort of thought form, even if it's ancient knowledge, whatever it is that was once suppressed, it will now come in to its complete opposite, its hero redemption arc. So when we are using the law of rhythm, we are actually understanding the larger context of what's happening inside this age because we're viewing it now through its proper lens. We can better understand that all of the overarching themes that we see taking place within this age are actually coming from a larger cycle. When we possess the knowledge of the
Interesting. Wow, that's really
This is wild.
yeah, that's pretty good actually. The way that she is describing it is actually
Yeah.
really good. This is a great way to get information. I'd like to at least absorb, I'm not even going to say half, but if I can get a new way to look at something from a different angle or a little more profound, I find it to be helpful, right? To find the rhythm.
You know,
It's
this
kind
is
of-
wild too. Yeah, I think of the first thing I thought of when she mentioned this and different movements and redemptions and up and down, left and right, and so on. And it's going to sound silly perhaps, but in trading, whether it's shares or currencies or things like that, reversion to the mean, nothing really moves in a straight line. I'm actually using this principle now without knowing it, you could say, but nothing moves straight up or straight down, right? It kind of moves in these waves. You know, it moves up and moves down a little, and it moves back up a little more, it moves down a little, say it's an uptrend. Moves up even more, moves back down a little. And it's like these waves, it's almost like it's always reverting to the mean, going back to an average.
Yep.
So there's a lot of different ways you could play this, but it's like a wavy motion, which is really cool. It's kind of like what I think she's getting at here in a way.
The one thing that she's describing, I liked how the way you put it too. I guess we all have our ways that we do it, but I play this fighting game Tekken for a very long time, right? And I've grown with the franchise, and I've understood the fundamentals and the rhythm and the mechanics of that game. You know, it's like anything, chess, darts, pool. It's very, very similar, right? But I play Tekken 8 now, and I really love the rhythm and the timing of that game, and how like my opponent also has his rhythm and timing, and I'm trying you know, when I play. You play great players eventually, and everybody has a strategy, and you're just trying to. And sometimes I break down my opponents almost immediately. I know what they're going to do before they do it, especially in like intermediate ranks. And it's like it's this beautiful symmetry that comes from the rhythm, the timing, and you can feel like their psychology too. Because like at the end of the beginning of the next round, you like kick them in the face, and they remember that because when they win the next round, they kick you in the face. So there's like this whole like kind of like goading each other, dogging each other. That goes on top of the rhythm. I guess it's more.
That's so interesting.
It's emotional, you know, and I don't. I don't mind losing. I learned one thing I learned about that is don't be afraid to lose because losing's how you learn. Don't take it to heart.
I've become very comfortable with loss in the same way. Loss in trading, for example, you're not going to win everything because, like, again, nothing moves in a straight line, right? That's part of the process. Sure, you want to win more than you lose, you know, at least in numbers terms. But yeah, I've become comfortable with loss because from that loss can come a lesson, and then from that lesson can, you know, it'll wave back. I hope in my direction if I apply it correctly.
Well, even
so
while
it's very
you're
cool, all the rhythms and the flow.
While we're losing, we're still learning, right? You're still learning how to do something better than you did before, or even like I don't know. Once you tried it 20 different ways, you're like, well, I've tried it doing A, D, and G together. So what if I kind of take what's in the middle of those things? Then you come back and you truly understand fundamentals, and that's when people are like, wow, you're so good at this. And you're like, no, I've tried it. I've worked with it.
Exactly, right?
You know?
You experimented, you put things together, you put ideas together, then you have your own style and flair. Like you said, it's an emotion too. You feel good about it.
Yeah.
At least ideally.
Even with something like this, just having both of our voices being heard on this podcast and even like the production of it, I certainly had to learn about the rhythm because, man, oh man, do you fail a lot. And rhythm meaning just like, the timing, the even like changing the scenes and all this. There's a lot in there. And I think there is a lot of, I think that some of the greatest things lie within rhythm,
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I like this law a lot too. It's helped me in presentations. It's helped me with my trading. It's helped me with even out socializing, conversing, having conversations. Mm-hmm. You let someone speak, I'll listen, right? And when I speak, hopefully the other person's listening, right? We're online. We're hoping people watching are listening and enjoying. Right. So, yeah.
But to be honest, how long can you listen for? Right. Eventually, you're gonna want to. You've had enough. I mean, it's like when the solar guys come.
Oh yeah, you can only take so much. Right.
And they're trying to sell me solar. I'm like, no matter what you say, I'm not going to listen. I don't care. So it's good to know.
That too. That's right. There are our politicians again, right?
Yeah, they're selling.
They're just not listening.
This law of rhythm, we are able to.
They might not be listening, but boy, are they talking.
Perceive
exactly
an inevitable pendulum-like swing that takes place within movements and within consciousness, and however strong of a degree that was pushed to one side of the pendulum will be the exact intensity that pendulum swing carries out to its opposite. Knowing this is how the alchemists extract themselves from this momentum of karma, and then we consciously position ourselves wherever we want to in this pendulum swing. And by consciously choosing our position there, then we neutralize ourselves there. And that's how we avoid the karmic momentum that's taking place to and from the cycles of nature.
Interesting.
The principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect.
I must say this After School is a great channel, and she's doing a terrific job at laying this out here.
I agree.
This video
is
really nice and put together.
Absolutely, yeah. They did a really good job with this. And as you noted earlier, the visuals are outstanding. They really help bring the concept together.
Absolutely.
It's like hitting your mind with the intellectual, and the audio, because she happens to have a nice voice, and also the visuals, because I tend to be a visual learner. So this is nice.
Every effect has its cause.
I like this rule too.
Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. This principle embodies the fact that there is a cause for every effect and an effect for every cause. It explains that everything happens according to law, and that nothing is ever merely by chance.
Oh, Frosty was having a good day.
I know, right? See, Frosty thought it was going to be below 32. He was having a great day until it hit like 34 degrees.
And the sun's kind of just looking at him like, oh, hey, man. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just doing
this
my job.
Law of cause and effect goes by an even more popular term, known as karma. And what this law also contains within it is the knowledge that karma can reside on higher planes of consciousness, which means that the cause of whatever we're experiencing as the effect is not always coming from the material realm. Knowing that there is always a cause and an effect at play can vastly improve our lives if we use that knowledge the way that the ancient alchemists did, by shifting the way that we are affected by.
Real quick, the one thing I want to say is that I really like this kind of information, and I think it is so horrible and strange that modern, like the religions now for the past, I guess, 500 years, 1,000, whatever, they have gone back and just demonize all of this information, all of this nice kind of logical information. It's just become like, oh, that's blasphemy. And I mean, I don't think it is. I think it's kind of helpful. I think it's really, it's good. It's helpful information, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that which helps people aim upward in a right direction towards their well-being and that of those around them, let's say, at least at a basic level, is good. And this, they've shown this somewhat, I believe they've shown this even in neuroscience, as you think, it's not like I can change reality with that. I'm always skeptical. I can't like wave my hand and suddenly jump off a building and fly. I'm not magic. Right?
Sure.
But I can sort of, if I think certain ways, it helps me achieve better outcomes. If I frame things in a certain way, maybe the person's not laughing, for example. Maybe a person in a crowd's not laughing at me. Maybe they're just laughing at a joke they heard, and I happen to be in the vicinity, right?
Sure.
I don't have to take it personally. Or if someone says something that's a little off in my direction, I can always think, well, maybe they're just having a bad day. They don't mean it personally. I don't take it personally.
Sure.
Most of the time. And I find that really helps because it eliminates a lot of that ego in the equation and sort of helps you stay mindful.
That's a very interesting take on that. But also remember that your primary language is English and you understand the language that they're saying. So someone in a whole other place could be saying the worst things in the world to you and they would never even break your barrier because you do not even understand the sounds coming out of their mouth. So remember,
that has actually happened to me. Yes.
Give those words power by even acknowledging them. Because if you're indifferent and you don't even listen to them and not care, then, you're better for it.
It's funny. I was talking to someone in South Korea and they were saying something in Japanese, and I know a little Japanese, but not a lot. I did not understand what they were saying. The person was actually kind of blowing me off.
Yeah.
I liked her. I went up to talk to her. I thought she was nice, and I thought, let me start a conversation with the lady I think I like. Let's see where this goes. She was actually blowing me off. It was funny, but I didn't know that. Because I didn't understand the word she was using, and I was polite. I didn't do anything inappropriate or off key. Eventually I said, she eventually turned, and then I realized when she turned her back, oh, that's what she was saying. Yeah. But for about 10 seconds there,
well,
just kept going. It didn't faze me at all. It's funny. Yeah.
Who are you to think, or anyone think that they even want to talk to you, right? Like you're like, oh, you seem nice, and it's like, get away from me. I don't want to talk to you.
I'm the comrade. I thought, friend to all, right? Come on now. But no, you're absolutely right. Maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe she didn't want to speak to a Westerner. Maybe she just didn't want to speak to anyone. Yeah, maybe she just wanted to have a night out with her friends, and I was that crazy dumb oaf. Interrupting them.
That happens to everybody, and I blow people off way more than I used to. Because why? Mm-hmm. Why? You're like, I'm not interested. Go away.
It's funny.
I don't want to giggle and laugh with you and learn. I just want to be left alone.
It's funny. It's funny how it works. But you're right, because I didn't understand the word at first, it didn't faze me. Whereas if she said something in English right away, it probably would have fazed me a lot faster.
Sure.
And I only realized what was happening after the interaction was over, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay." I was like, "Okay, that's kind of interesting." Yeah.
Happens all the time if you go out in public. When I go to Germany, I used to think I could just go hang out with people and everybody wanting to have fun, and then I realized the Germans are pretty selective of who they hang out with and what they do.
That's also true. You're right. Right.
Well, I noticed that too. When we shift the way that we react to any response or stimulus, now we are able to transcend that karmic thread. This is first done by doing our best to understand what originated that cause. What was the first action that caused that reaction? And then from there, choosing with our own conscious free will to respond in a different manner rather than react from an automated state of unconsciousness. The alchemist applies their own consciousness and their own free will in order to shift.
I interact with a lot of people through the different jobs I've had who are just they're angry, they're mean, they're bitter. There's a lot of bitter people, and they don't practice this at all. They got so much. True. They're just so confrontational over nothing. The way a door closes. How you hand them something. I mean, these people they're so destroyed, and they're so sad and broken inside. But on the outside, they want to be just these overbearing, gossiping. I mean, it's like, I don't ever want to be like that. I just don't.
It's true. I've met people like that too.
And to shift the effect from its cause. The principle of gender states that gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. This principle embodies the truth that there is gender manifested in everything. On the physical plane,
that's crazy. Look in the water. You see the sperm and the egg.
Oh, you know what?
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's great. That's cool. I didn't even pick up on that right away. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's cool. And then they both give life. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Manifests as sex. On the higher planes, it takes higher forms. but the principle is always the same. Everything and every person contains the two elements. Every male thing has the female element within it, and every female thing contains the male element within it. The principle of gender is profoundly valuable because once we understand that we contain both masculine and feminine elements to varying degrees and ratios, we can use that for mental creation. The same way on the physical plane that the masculine and feminine energies create life, on the mental plane, we can use our masculine and feminine energies and the elements within us to create.
It's strange too, that story I wrote, which probably is 10 years ago. Again, I watch anime and stuff like that. I play video games. I know things, but a lot of the characters have, like, the one girl, she was constantly going through this different evolutions of being feminine, and she grew to be very powerful and feminine. And the other, that there was absolutely a male, not man, but like what do the natives always call it? Masculine. There was a masculine.
Yeah, like a
energy.
Masculine energy or character, right?
And that's like a big part of the story. There's a lot of masculine and there's a lot of feminine, but they're two very specific entities. And it's just funny. I don't know. I didn't know this kind of stuff, but it's weird.
This reminds me a little bit of, to some degree, of the polarity principle they went over earlier. Although in this case, they're naming the energies, you will. But it's kind of like, so for example, on a very simple, basic level, we're all human, right? But we have, well, generally men and women. Or masculine and feminine. It's just interesting, like, yeah, but yet we're all still human beings, probably more alike on most things than we are different. But where we are different at the extremes.
Well, also, I mean,
you see this.
You and I might be human beings, but we live on the same planet with frogs that are male and female, and every other.
That's right, and then you get into frogs and. Yeah,
frogs and
bears,
single-celled organisms, and like it goes everywhere. Well, I don't know about the seahorse, but like for the most part, it goes across all the mammals and most of the everything, really.
And to regenerate, we can apply this law to our mental creations by drawing them towards us with our magnetism. Our magnetism is a part of our emotional body, and the emotional body is our feminine elements. So when we combined our masculine energies, such as thought and action, with our feminine energies of magnetism coming from the emotional body and the emotional experience that we're calling forward through the sensations of our emotions. What we're doing is amplifying our ability to be magnetic. And just like a magnet, our creations get drawn forward and called to us. So unifying these two energies.
That was an extremely epic segment right there.
How about that animation, right? That had little elements of anime in it even.
Dude,
it was pretty cool.
Really great.
Yeah.
Is how we call forward our manifestations. Now, what I'm about to tell you about these 7 Hermetic principles has never been taught anywhere before.
Oh, yeah?
It has never been written of.
Oh, here we
and
go.
it has never been told.
Is this her pitch?
And that is, these 7 laws are actually one principle and one law that gets emanated into 7 different rays and into 7 different laws and principles.
Interesting.
Yeah,
so they're actually
aligned,
all
right?
the same law. And the reason we see them as 7 is because there are 7 different expressions and ways that they are conveyed. You will most likely have to meditate upon what I have just said in order to deeply and truly understand
I agree.
it. I recommend that you recognize these laws for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Go out into your lives and notice how these 7 principles.
That's the best advice. Go out into your lives and see how they work. That's the best.
I agree. That is one of my favorite advices. The Buddha, or some Buddhist monks have even said, don't take my word for it. Go out there and test it for yourself. And I'm really a big fan of that because I'm big on evidence and observation.
Sure.
Play out and interact with one another. And everything, small or large, within or without. Thank you for tuning into this episode of After School. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more of this content,
I enjoyed it very much. I'm going to give you a thumbs up. You did an absolutely wonderful job. That was the Hermetic Principles, Ancient Wisdom for a Better Life.